In general, what is David like as a vocalist to work with? Is there anything unique about his approach to recording vocals?
I'll tell you one thing that I love about David is that he will just sing as long as I need him to sing. He doesn't complain. He gives me as many times as I need him to do it. He'll do it. If I want to make changes, he'll accommodate them, try it at least. He's always going to have his own opinion of what he wants to do, but he's very open to working with someone like myself. And if it's better, he realizes it's better and does all his own harmonies. He's a great harmony guy too. I mean, he'll really put in the time that's needed.
That's very cool. I was just going to ask you about that actually, because I spoke recently with a producer who worked with Jerry Cantrell and Amy Lee, and he said, for instance, there's a big difference between the two of them. Like Jerry Cantrell, he'll have him sing for like 10, 15-minute bursts, then he'll give him time to rest his voice, come back in. That's kind of how they approach it. Whereas he said with Amy Lee, he could just have her singing for hours and her voice doesn't wear out. So David is,
Yeah.
I guess, more along those lines.
David is really along those lines. He can. I mean, he's not. He's not Superman. I mean, he eventually has to have a break if he's singing a lot of high stuff, but he can go for a long time. And there's definitely some singers over my years of working that you are that 10 to 15 minute guy, and that doesn't mean there are any less singers or any less good singers. It's just that people sing in different ways and different textures need a little bit of time off in between, and depending on how much work it is to sing their styles. I mean, obviously in metal we're usually talking about very aggressive singing, and it's not like the Carpenters, where probably Karen Carpenter could probably sing for 3 days straight and not need a break when you're singing low and quiet. But these guys it's you've got to be on the edge every time, every song, and you just can't keep it up for long, without damaging your voice. It's a physical thing. It's an organic thing. It's not a guitar that you can just keep playing over and over again. A voice is delicate, you know. So probably one of the most delicate things I would think on your body.
Was there any one vocal in particular from David that really stuck out to you from whatever you
Well,
worked on with him?
I mean, unfortunately, we're always going to talk about the Sound of Silence because that was the one. That's really an amazing vocal. That's what made that song. So thank you, David. I think in his case, I think they're all good. He never just tries to slough over anything. He's doing every song thinking that's going to be their next biggest song, and he's putting his heart into it. So the Sound of Silence worked amazingly well, honestly. But I mean, some of those more delicate ones on Evolution were really good too. I mean, A Reason to Fight, he kind of stretched out a little bit more in that one too, and I love it when he gets all sort of softer and more emotional. And I even though, I mean, you can't argue with the aggression of his voice on "Are You Ready" or something like that. I mean, he's just a master at that. But I think for him it's probably, he's done that so much and is so good at it that it's probably more of a challenge for him to sing in the different styles. And maybe Sound of Silence was something that triggered, yeah, I can do other things too. I can sing like, some of those ballady songs on Evolution. I mean, all this sort of acousticy kind of songs, I thought he did a really good job of, and really had his heart in the right place. You expect him to be awesome on the heavy songs. It's when people are stretching outside of their elements that you don't know how it's going to go, and it's always nice when it goes great.
Hmm.
So
So one of the things about him that stick out to me is he has a very operatic voice, and you don't really see that in modern day metal so much. You see it a lot in the 80s and 70s, but not so much today. Working
yeah,
with someone who's more operatic, is there a different way you have to approach his vocals than you would someone who's not like that?
yeah, you know, he's definitely a little different than the other singers that I've worked with. And even in a sense, some of my own musical tastes. I mean, I'm a hillbilly at heart, so I like a lot of, more organic countryish singing. So Dave is almost the opposite of that. But he's very, every note you're either hitting it or you're not hitting it. He's not sliding too much into notes and moving the melody around. He's like, he's on. And that's what I mean. But that's probably some of the choir background that he had. So I think sometimes with that kind of singing, it is a little bit harder to get any emotion out of it, because it is so much on or off. You're either in tune or out of tune. It's not necessarily the emotional impact of that word, the way the guy's singing it. He's not even singing the right vowel sound, but it sounds cool. It's really not that. He's a little bit more typically on everything. And when he's singing, a lot of times, he gets his vocals done fairly fast because the melody's defined. He sings it in tune, sings it in time, knows what he's doing, sings it 4 times. Great. If I asked him to sing it more times than that, he'd probably sing exactly the same way. So I think with David, I think a lot of my approach was to try to get him off his game a little bit by, I would even say something simple as sing it really quiet. Like, even if I knew that that's never going to be the vocal on the final track, just sing it really quiet and let's see what that does. See what that does to how you're singing that lyric. Are you thinking of it differently? And a lot of times these things aren't spoken, but that's one of the things I'm sure he'd probably tell you that, now sing it a little bit more aggressive, sing it even more aggressive than you thought you could sing it. With someone like David, who's just a naturally born singer, that's almost the only thing I can offer him in many ways, is getting him outside of what he normally does, and at least having him stretch a little more, because it's so easy for him in the sense, easy, not easy for us, but easy for him to do the things that he does. For him at this point, that, stretching out and doing ballads and doing songs that don't require that operatic kind of attack is what you're saying. Yeah. I know exactly what you mean by that. And that actually made some of the lighter songs more of a challenge. But he was ready for that challenge and did great. David's one of the most naturally gifted singers that I've worked with. Great pitch, great aggression. He can be very aggressive and yet sound very musical. So I'm not. He does have a big warm up thing that he does. With me and him, it's like once he's warmed up and in there, we just start, attacking it. And generally, I don't know if it's always David's process, but my process is always little bits at a time. I want to get the most out of every single line. I'm not really a guy that expects a singer to sing all through the whole song 3 times and then leave. I'm kind of going through verse 1. Let's make verse 1 as good as we possibly can. Now the second verse, and then we go to the first chorus, and then and then you got to make sure that it all flows through, as a production and as a thought process too. So, but again, those decisions, when you're done as many times as David or I have, that we're already thinking of those things ahead of time, making sure it flows from the verses to the choruses. And even if it's not sung as a continuous pass, it's gonna work. I think out of everything, I put a great deal of attention on vocals, because that's the first thing almost that people hear. Mm-hmm. Definitely the most identifiable thing in general, other than, of course, in metal, it's a guitar. But I think I'd have to say that's the most important thing. I've heard lots of great songs with great vocals with bad guitar riffs. I've never heard a great song with a bad vocal. So to me, it's the most important thing. And to have someone with as much attention to it as David is awesome. And Sound of Silence was a gift too. We could never have orchestrated that. I'd like to say it was my brilliance, and I brought the song to the band and said, my vision is, David, that you will sing this song and it will become one of your biggest. It wasn't that. It was like, what are we going to do today, guys?
I hear you, man.
That's How about Sound of Silence? What? Oh, yeah. Hello, darkness, my old friend. Well, that's a good lyric. Yeah, it could be cool.
It's also a meme now, which is kind of funny.
Is it?
Yeah, the Hello Darkness thing, yeah. So.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I'd float through the keys on piano to try to find the right key for David. And then in my mind thinking, okay, I'm going to get him to do something he's never done, which is sing really low. We all know what an awesome high singer he is, but to that point, I don't think he did a lot of the lower stuff. So I'm trying to find the right key that he can make all the high notes, but still sing in that low tone he does in the first couple of verses too. So I always had that vision in my mind that would, like, once we started playing it, like I said, from the time I was still playing the piano and David was singing, I was thinking about that. So I didn't really voice that, I just, I let the surprises come, so I don't have to have arguments. Mm-hmm. But he started singing it, and, obviously it's a delicate, mellow first couple of verses and builds into what it does. And so, again, we had pretty much that whole bed of music done. And, because I really wanted to give him something emotional to sing too. So he could really feel the energy of it and the darkness of it in a certain sense. So we really did want to finish that as much as we could. And then, whereas usually I try to get a vocal on a song as soon as I can and then build the music around that vocal. But in this case, as we worked on it, we could see the way it was going. And so, when Dave went in the booth to sing, it was, it was kind of fascinating because it was also one of the few songs where the whole band was there at vocal tracking. Usually it's just me and the singer. Like, so me and David would sit there and Dan and Mike would go into the other room or do whatever, or Dan would be working on more music or something like that. But I kind of remember them all being there for it, and witnessing it, and it was cool. But he just started singing higher but soft, and try it low, sing it a little bit softer low. I think David has such that iconic rock voice, known for that not one thing, but known for, you can't help but when you hear his voice go, man, that guy's got an amazing voice. So he's got great pitch, great range, all those kinds of things. And I don't know if he was sold right away at first when I suggested that we start it lower, but it was I kind of remember being a little tough at first too, because it's out of his element, but it didn't take him long to kind of start getting into it and nailing it down. And we just kept working at it, and then we go in the second verse, go back to the first verse again, and give him another couple shots at it, and just little bit by little bit, we started building that. I think, if I remember, I think we did do that song all in the same session. I can't remember exactly, but David might have a different point of view on how it went down. I'm not sure, but that's my memory of it.
What is the band like in studio? Like, how is their creative chemistry together, and how do you fit into that puzzle with them?
While Dan's in here tracking stuff, David's in the lounge, thinking of lyrics, going through it, coming in, telling us the ideas that he has, and we comment on that. The first record I did, I think, was from what they were telling me, was one of the first records where they really wanted to be collaborative, in the sense that Dan wanted to have a voice in how the lyrics were, even though David's writing them. But I don't think they were maybe as collaborative as they started on that record. And David's got to be singing on the music too, so he wants to have some say on what kind of music tracks that he's getting too.
So you mentioned a couple of things that kind of jumped out to me. You said that David would be sometimes working on lyrics while the other guys were tracking. So they wouldn't have all the lyrics and like all the song parts ready. They're still figuring it out while they're in the studio with you.
Oh yeah. They don't have all the songs ready to go yet. So they have a lot of the ideas. Like I said, Dan would bring in a big bucket full of song ideas and starts, and a lot of them were largely complete. And then some we even started some songs here. I think Immortalized was started in my studio from scratch. I think Dan actually played that riff in my studio for the first time. So, and David might have he might have written some lyrics already to existing Dan music tracks, but generally doesn't, at least for me, he didn't have them all finished. And then some other cases, I think he had some ideas of what he wanted to write about, and that sort of thing too. So, everybody comes here armed, but we're not on the front lines yet, battling it out. We just let's see what we got. And then you just literally a thing of, in some cases, just figuring out the best one first. What's the most complete song, or what song's ready to go? Let's start working on that. And while we're working on this, what's the second one? Well, that one's that. So maybe, David, you want to be finishing the second song off lyrically. And while Dan and I are doing the music on the first one, David's running in to pass by some lyric ideas and melody ideas and that sort of thing. And it just keeps going around and around. And I think with the way that I work, is a lot of times my records are pretty circular, whereas they're never over until they're over. Meaning that at any time, even one song we said was done, someone has a better idea a month down the road, we still readdress it and still go back to that song and say, well, maybe this course can be better. Or if we're looking at a song that's pretty good and a great rocking track, but maybe it's going to be a focused single track, maybe we got to color it up a little bit differently than what it was too. So it's always round and round, and just keep basically chipping away at it like a sculpture. You just take the weakest moments and keep trying to make them better and better until you got the work of art that you actually want.